and welcome to Living One. My name is Olivia Crossman. I am your host. Living One is a monthly webinar series in which presenters from around the world share their vision for a future where all Earth beings live as one community in peace, dignity, and freedom. We ask the question, we know what's wrong, but what does right look like? This last fall marked the beginning of Living One's 4th year, but today these conversations are more important than ever before, for they are more than conversations. They are opportunities to build community, salve for the isolating wounds of our time. Today, we have the 4th session of our winter series, Animal Trauma Responsive Care and Alternative Medicine. Continuing over the next 3 weeks, we will hear the perspectives of 3 individuals who have dedicated their lives to animal psychological and physical healing as they share their experiences and the transformative nature of this work. We are delighted to have you join us as we explore this important topic together. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are all currently on various different Indigenous lands. I am currently on the ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, which includes the Ojibwa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. This land exists also as a place of trade with other Indigenous communities, including the Ho-Chunk, Miami, Menominee, Sauk, and Meskwaki. The Krulo Center for Nonviolence, located in Southern Oregon, is also the homelands of the grizzly bear, Takelma, and gray wolf. To recognize the land is to recognize the lasting effects of colonization, genocide, and oppression that still impact Indigenous communities today, but it is also an expression of gratitude and appreciation for the land and for all those whose homelands we live and work on. In the 4th of this 6-part series, we welcome Kathleen Prasad. Kathleen is the founder of Animal Reiki Source and president and co-founder of the nonprofit Shelter Animal Reiki Association, which supports rescued animals and their caregivers with the Let Animals Lead method of animal Reiki in shelters and sanctuaries around the world. A Reiki practitioner and teacher for 25 years, Kathleen has pioneered the field of Reiki for animals, creating the first and only code of ethics for the profession, as well as the Let Animals Lead method of animal Reiki. The Let Animals Lead approach is the only method of animal Reiki that emphasizes meditation and animal agency as ethical imperatives and the keys to successful healing sessions. Kathleen is also the author of several books on Reiki, including the Let Animals Lead Meditation Journal, Reiki for Dogs, and Heart to Heart with Horses, an Equine Lover's Guide to Reiki. Kathleen enjoys life with her husband and daughter, dog and horse in Northern California. Before we begin, let me share a few logistical notes. Kathleen will be speaking for 45 minutes, after which we will have 15 minutes for question and answer. In order to proceed in a timely manner, we do ask that you please send your questions along in the chat during Kathleen's presentation, and we will read them out after she's finished. For anyone who isn't familiar with the Zoom chat function, if you move your cursor towards the bottom of your screen, you will see a number of icons appear, one of which is the chat function towards the center left of your screen. If you click on that, the chat will appear where you can type any questions or comments as we go. We have 2 members of our Krulos community here with us today, Jenny and Diksha, who will be monitoring the chat throughout our time together. Also, please do note that the Zoom session will be recorded, so if you would feel more comfortable leaving your camera off or changing your Zoom name, please feel free to do so. Finally, we ask that unless you're currently speaking, you keep your microphone muted to avoid any unintended interruptions. So without further ado, we welcome Kathleen Prasad.
Hi, everybody. So great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. We're so excited to have you. To start off, do you want to tell us a little bit about your personal arc to Animal Reiki?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, I guess so many things in life are, it was an unintended destination in my life. But I feel so grateful that I'm here. I actually thought I was just going to be a teacher, and I taught for 9 years in the middle schools in San Francisco, and I taught English, I taught social studies, and I ran the drama program. And I really loved working with kids, and I had a special gift for kids who were not interested in school and who found themselves often getting into trouble. My secret was connecting with them through animals. I found that if I could I always had pictures of my dog on the wall. If I could tell stories of what my dog did, if I could ask them if they have animals. And this was a way to really break down walls, which often kids who don't feel there's a place for them in these school institutions, they often feel so alienated that they build these walls. And there's really no way as a teacher it's very difficult to break through. animals were my secret ingredient. I knew if I could tell my story of animals, sometimes in English, I would have them write a story from the perspective of their dog. Oh, they didn't want to write anything, but if it was, oh, my dog is going to be, yeah, so I found all these ways to connect. And I was volunteering at the time, walking dogs at our local shelter in San Francisco. And I approached them and I said, hey, I teach, I've got all these kids, and I'd love to do a community service project. And even though they had older volunteer requirements, I'm like, for the purpose of this project, can my kids come in and volunteer on the weekends and videotape themselves and present to everybody, right? And they said, absolutely, we'd love to. So my kids actually took a weekend and in groups, and they came and they cleaned cat cages, and they, swept floors, and they did laundry, and they, cleaned food dishes and whatever they needed. And they made videos of themselves and taught, made little presentations. Well, I couldn't believe it that even the kids that literally did nothing for school showed up on Saturday and worked hard, worked their tail off all day to do this presentation. So this was before I learned Reiki, but I have always been very connected and close to animals in my own life. And I have always found them to be a lock or a key to unlock that, whatever that is that we are guarding. They disarm us, and they help us to be more true to our heart and to who we are. And so at around that time, when I was having, really bringing animals in and finding all the success and feeling so grateful to these shelter animals, I learned Reiki for myself. It wasn't something I wanted to learn, but my mother-in-law had some, and she said, oh, Kathleen, you have to try it next time you visit. I'm going to get you a session. And I'm like, oh, well, my mother-in-law, I have to say yes, right? What are you going to do? So I got a session. Next time I visited her, she was living in Denver at the time. And it was the most amazing experience. I felt so relaxed. And I grew up as having a lot of anxiety since the time I was about 4 or 5, and having panic attacks. It was just kind of part of me navigating the world, that I just was this anxious person. That's how I saw myself. In that Reiki session, all is well. Everything melted away. I just felt this inner peace. And it was like connecting with my true self, like the part of myself that had gotten buried under all the stresses of my life. And so I knew after that one session, this is for me, like a duck to water. This is my jam. This is my language. This is going to heal me. I knew, and so I looked around for a local class here in the Bay Area where I live, near San Francisco. I found a local class. I took a class. I immediately started practicing. And it was really about reconnecting with that inner child that had kind of gotten lost in all the stress and anxiety of as I grew up. And it was just an amazing experience of self-healing. Now, as I was practicing on myself every day, and for humans, really common practice is hands-on Reiki like this. And so you sit and you do this hands-on. So I would sit, and my dog Dakota, he was my soul dog, and he was an Australian Shepherd mix. He was always at my side, a shepherd. So, 2 or 3 feet of respectful distance and laying at my side. That was always how he was. He followed me from room to room, but always had his respectful distance. Well, during this Reiki session, as I'm learning how to do this, he would come and crawl on top of my feet in this weird position and lay down like right on top of my feet. And I'm like, what are you doing, Dakota? You've never done this before. This is weird, and I kind of laughed and I'm like, whatever. And I kept doing my thing. But after like the 3rd time he did it, I went, I think that he likes Reiki. And so I sat down next to him and I put my hands on him, and he rolled on his side and he took a big sigh, like, finally, Mom, I've been trying to tell you, And so in that moment, it was not only this light bulb that, oh, animals experience that peace that Reiki brings to me, like that, making that connection. It wasn't just that. It was also, how did he know what it was from across the room? Like I would just start doing my practice and he'd come in from another room. Like, how does he know what it is? And how does he know how to connect with it? Even though I'm just doing this for myself. So there was this big sort of wonderment about how he understood energy and healing energy specifically. It was a lot for me to take in at once.
Yeah.
But that set the stage for the next chapter of my life, which was sharing, studying human Reiki, but sharing also Reiki with as many animals. I asked my supervisor at the shelter, can I do Reiki with the dogs after I walk them? She's like, go ahead. And then they had such amazing responses of stressed out dogs being relaxed that she started, oh, can you work on this one and that one? And they called me into the cat area to work with, whoever really was stressed out or had issues. So I started to really have this sort of this dovetailing of all the shelter animals and everything they were helping me with in my school life and also in my Reiki life, everything they were teaching me and showing me. And it was just, it became my passion that I want every shelter animal or every animal who's traumatized or every animal who is suffering, I want them to be able to have access to this. And so that sort of created this, I didn't have space in my life to teach middle school. So I retired and started doing Animal Reiki full time. Now, at this time, when I learned Reiki, which was back in 1998, there was no such thing as Animal Reiki. There was human Reiki. And then they would say in a class, oh, and you can do it with animals and plants and trees, everything is good, for Reiki. And so I had that kind of permission. And so when I first started sharing Reiki with animals, I did it exactly the way I learned for humans. And so there was a lot of prescribed hand positions. There was a method, a physical method that you had to do. You start at the head, you move down the body, hand positions. There was a very kind of strict method. And I tried to use this with animals. And that's how I started, Animal Reiki. Yeah. But if I could say like sort of that final arc, part of the arc into where I am today as I sit with you guys and talk about this today, is I realized if I try to put animals in a box when I'm doing Reiki, and I say, this is how we do Reiki, and I decided that you needed it because you can't have a conversation with them. With humans, it's very different. They'll come to your studio. Obviously, they're asking for Reiki, and, we're tactile creatures. We connect energetically with touch. There's a lot that makes sense for humans. But as I worked with more animals, I realized, well, what if animals walk away? Do I leash a dog so they have to submit? Do I cross tie a horse so I can do all the hand positions and they can't walk away? And I initially did that in the beginning because that's what all the human people were saying. Yeah, this is how you do Reiki. It didn't sit well inside. It didn't feel right. And so I started to let go of the human prescribed steps and tools when I was with animals just to see what would happen, because I knew deep in my heart that the space of Reiki is a space of loving kindness and compassion, open-heartedness, and pure peace, where all is well. It's just a well-being that just comes from within and just shines out. That's the Reiki space. I wanted animals to come to that organically, the way I came to it. And being a very anxious person growing up in my whole life, if someone would have strapped me down on a table and said, Kathleen, you're anxious and you need this Reiki session, and started doing things, I would have been terrified. I sometimes describe my personality type as being like a feral cat. That's sort of how my husband laughs, but it's kind of the way that I relate to the world and some people in it. So I really was sensitive to doing that to others, especially animals who are in an unfamiliar environment, shelter animals, caged in an unfamiliar environment and coming very often from trauma. That would be the worst place to make that mistake, wouldn't it? And so this led me on a journey of letting go of hands, letting go of my thoughts about what needs to happen and what the animal needs, and learning to take a step back and go inward with the meditation practice. When the more that I learned to let go of all of my expectations, let go of the story of the animal too. I don't need to think about, oh my God, this happened to them, that happened to them. Just see their inner heart and their beautiful inner light. Let go, just be here in this moment with an open heart and with a beginner's mind to let whatever happens happen. If the animal walks away, that's fine. If they come back, great. If they lay down 10 feet away, perfect. If they come step into my lap, also great. Just letting it be whatever it is. It took a lot of courage and a lot of years to get there, because everyone around me was saying, no, you've got to do it like this. You know what they need. You know their diagnosis, and you need to give them this. And so I sort of had to say, no, I'm letting go of all that. And what has emerged is this amazing witnessing of animal wisdom in the energy space, in the language of energy, and an understanding that actually animals deserve to have freedom even in the context of this, where I'm doing my best and I mean well, but that's all human ego. So learning how to give animals space to show what they want, how or if they want to connect, empowering them to, and the last thing I'll say about this is animals are PhDs in energy, and I'm the kindergarten student. So why would I be leading the class in this energetic space? I can't possibly, and as much as I meditate and study and expand and grow, I just am not at their level with sensitivity and understanding. So it really uncovered that for me, and a trust that they will lead and all will be well. And so that's what sort of brings me here where I am today, 25 years later.
Oh, that's beautiful. What a journey. That's beautiful. I love how it just seems like it's come full circle with following Dakota from the very beginning, and now letting all your different animal teachers guide you where they want. Do you want to tell us a little bit, maybe for anyone who doesn't know here, about just what Reiki is, what the process is like, and maybe with what you just said, how that's different now, doing Reiki with animals versus doing Reiki with humans, or how maybe their teaching has informed your understanding of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Reiki actually is Japanese in origin. It's 101 years old. It was created in 1922 in Japan.
Wow.
By a Japanese man named Mikao Usui, a spiritual teacher in Japan. And Reiki literally means spiritual energy. Rei is spirit and ki is energy. You might have heard the word chi also. That's Chinese for energy. So Reiki, Japanese for spiritual energy. What does that mean? This means the energy that makes up the universe, that everything is made of. So I am Reiki. You are Reiki, the animals are Reiki, the trees are Reiki, the river is Reiki, the earth and the sky and the moon and the sun. Everything in this universe is made up ultimately of energy. We're all made of the same stuff. This is what Reiki means. So that's really, it indicates the level that we're touching when we practice, okay? We're going to that deepest essence of who we are. So a central teaching of Reiki is oneness. Because if we are all made of this same stuff, then we are all one, but we've forgotten that we're all one. So how do we remember that connection? And that's where the system of Reiki comes in. And that's the practices that you learn when you take a class. And there's a variety of things that you learn, like the Reiki precepts, which are instructions for living a balanced life. And those are for today only: do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, work diligently, be kind to others. So these kind of instructions for, okay, well, I want to remember my connection. I want to remember to be one and to live with that compassion. But how do I do that? Well, work on these things. These are the things you work on to help you be more balanced. So there's that. That's a central teaching of Reiki. And then there's hand positions, like I've talked about. So you learn when you take a human Reiki class how to do, actually, you'll learn this in my class too, how to do these hand positions in like a meditative space where you just relax and do different hand positions. You learn how to do that on a person as well. But I don't teach that for animals because animals connect differently, as I've said. There are also Japanese breathing techniques, and I'm going to teach one of them here today, if we have time. And these breathing techniques help us to attain a greater state of mindfulness. So a lot of what makes us forget our oneness and forget that we are this beautiful essence of light of the universe is that we're not living in the present moment. We're angry about what happened yesterday. We're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. We're everywhere except here. So these breathing techniques actually help you let go of the past, the future, all of our emotional burdens, and just be with your breath in this moment. So that mindfulness is a very important teaching. And, there are also some other techniques that you learn in classes, but basically it's a very Japanese oriented way of getting in touch with your spiritual energy and the connectedness that you feel in your life because of that, and ultimately the happiness that you feel in your life, realizing it, remembering, really, because we've just forgotten. But it's like some of my students say when they take a class, wow, I'm learning new things, but it feels like I'm coming home, and I love that about this practice. So there are many different teachings in the world today about Reiki, and most of them are human-based, and some of them are animal-based, but with a human method. And then there's Let Animals Lead, which I've created, which is actually animal-led and meditation-based. And that, to me, as everything I've talked about today, it's really an ethical choice that we need to make, because even in the spiritual world, if you are wanting to support animals with spiritual healing, ego can still sneak in. It can still sort of drive what's happening, and you can end up creating a space where animals are simply submitting to your designs of what you decide needs to happen. And if I've learned anything over the last 25 years, it's that we can't heal anybody else. Maybe we can't even heal ourselves. That's hard enough. But where we need to be is working on ourselves And what our animal Reiki practice or Reiki practice does is it creates a space to support the animals in their healing journey, whatever that looks like for them. So I'm not a healer. I'm a practitioner of this practice, and I have learned how to hold space to support animals to heal themselves. So I'm more of it's a much more sort of passive openness and empowerment for the animals, and a recognition of their wisdom and their agency, even in their own healing process. And so it can be a really beautiful respite for an animal who, due to their condition in their life or where they live or whatever they find themselves in, there's a lot of rules. Like, you have to live here, you have to live like this is when you go outside, this is when you eat, this is what you eat, this, right? There's a lot of prescribed things that animals have to deal with. Reiki time is a time where they get to choose. They get to be free, and we get to see their personality and their spiritual prowess, I guess, come forward when we give them the space to show it. And I've been in so many situations with animals who are shut down, animals who've been rescued, for example, from like a farm sanctuary. They've been rescued from a really brutal situation, and they're completely shut down and there's no one home. And I'll sit on the ground, not facing them, somewhere far enough away that it doesn't disturb them. And I'll just meditate. I'll begin my practice of meditation. And after a little bit, the animal will kind of look, and then they might get up and they might come closer. And I've had a lot of experience where animals come all the way to the fence and then lie down and completely sleep a deep, peaceful rest. And for an animal who's afraid to be in the presence of a human and who wants to be as far away from them as possible, this is an amazing, I mean, it's every time it happens, it's so humbling. And I'm so grateful. And you know what? I didn't have to touch them. I didn't have to beam anything at them. I didn't have to figure out, well, what do they need to heal? What's their problem? And I'm here to rescue them. All I did was sit and go inward and just really become present. Let go of all my crap and just be with an open heart, and just all is well, and just be in that space. And that is such a powerful way to support an animal to heal. I think it's, there are many times where we do need to do interventions with veterinarians and other things to help animals. But that's not what Animal Reiki is about. It's the opposite of an intervention, really. It's a recognition of wholeness in this moment. No matter what's going on, I see you, all is well, and you are whole. And that recognition is a very powerful, and animals feel that really strongly. And you might be the first person who didn't see them as broken, who didn't pity them for what they'd been through. And so this sort of light coming back on in their spirit, and this confidence that can often happen in that space, is just absolutely incredible and really beautiful. So in short, Animal Reiki is really meditating with animals for healing. But the animals are the ones leading that healing process, and we are like a compassionate support to that process.
Beautiful. That's wonderful. That sounds really impactful. Did you have a meditation practice prior to starting Reiki when your mother-in-law suggested it the first time, or was that kind of your first experience with it?
I actually didn't. But what I did have was, my husband and I were very active in our 20s and 30s doing martial arts. And so we belonged to a martial arts school here in San Francisco, and we would practice like 3 times a week, and we were really into it. And so my first experience with energy was in that sort of martial way,
Mm-hmm.
but it was interesting when I started practicing Reiki, I could feel a movement of energy, but it was in a very different, it wasn't the way, like, being a smaller woman in a martial arts school, you can imagine a lot of during sparring, there's big guys. I had to learn how to use my energy being smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I had an understanding of energy and its direction and force and how powerful it can be.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started practicing Reiki, I felt the movement of the energy, but it was in a more of an internal way. And it actually helped me improve my martial arts practice, understanding an internal movement of energy versus just external, because it really is. At higher levels, martial arts is a totally internal spiritual practice. But I don't think I really got that until I started practicing Reiki. So that's how energy first came into my life and how it made sense to me. And then this more meditative aspect was something animals taught me. My first meditations were not anything except going, okay, the animal doesn't like when I do this, when I do that. They don't even like when I'm thinking something, because my emotions start getting. So what if I just stop and I let go and just, okay, there's the sky, there's the animal. Okay, breathe. That was my first meditation, just to learn how to be with the animal so that I was a calming presence instead of a chaotic presence. So animals really taught me that just be with me, let go of that. I don't like that. Stop thinking that, stop doing that. Just be here. That was really my first practice. And then over many years of studying human Reiki, I discovered a Japanese lineage of Reiki, human Reiki, that taught meditation as an aspect of their teachings. And so that's what I bring in to my teachings now. But not all human Reiki practice is meditation based. A lot of it isn't, actually. A lot of it is just hands based.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And it does sound like the animals bring the degree of meditation. That's so interesting. And what a cool distinction between the meditative experience of martial arts and also how that informs this. So it sounds like when you were talking about your experience with Dakota and that first experience of Reiki with animals, that was a very meditative experience. And would you say, in a similar way to how Dakota, it sounds like, informed your journey here, were there any other individuals on your path that were particularly impactful or had a specific, contributed something specific to your journey?
Absolutely. I mean, so many, but I would say my best teachers have always been shelter and sanctuary animals, and they've always been the most fragile, the ones that you least expect. And that has really informed me to understand that even the smallest creature, even an animal in its final days who looks so weak and fragile, can be an absolutely incredible wisdom teacher for you if you're listening. And the animal that's really coming to my mind right now is Harley. And Harley was an 800-pound pig, a hog, actually. And he lived at Brighthaven, which was a special needs animal sanctuary and hospice in Northern California. They have since closed, but I actually worked with them for about 13 years, and they're a wonderful, wonderful organization. So Harley lived at Brighthaven, and he was rescued from a 4-H program where he was, the child had raised him and then found out, oh, what? They're selling him to go be food. No, we have to save him. So somehow they got a neighbor, and the neighbor contacted Brighthaven. And so Brighthaven hadn't had pigs before. So they thought, oh, pig, no problem, easy. Well, pigs dig, they knock things over. It was quite a thing to get him a pasture that he couldn't get out of. And then he kept growing. He got completely huge. So that was quite an undertaking. But he was so sweet and so human loving. I remember when my daughter was a toddler, she used to lay down on a hay bale and sing songs to him. And he would lay down next to her and just oink, 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 oink to her songs. I mean, he was the most loving, sweet pig. So in his later years, his hind end failed him because, as you guys probably know, I forget how old hogs are when they're slaughtered for food, but they're not meant to live very long. They're meant to grow very big, very fast for maximum profit, and then, become part of the food chain, unfortunately. So he grew so big that his legs could not support him, and he became paraplegic. And at that time, everybody said, oh, you should euthanize him. He can't walk. And, Brighthaven at the time had a bunch of cats and dogs. Well, maybe not cats, but they had cats that were dragging themselves around that were paraplegic, and they had dogs in wheelchairs. The cats didn't really like the wheelchairs, but the dogs did. And so they said, well, if we could find a wheelchair big enough that could support him, we would do that, but we can't. But why would we kill him? He's still living his life. He's happy. He's oinking and like very engaged. And he'd drag himself to his mud pool and roll around in it and then drag himself under the tree. And he would get up to eat his food. So he was still living a quality of life. So they said, well, we're not euthanizing him. He's here. And this is who he is. And he's perfect. And that's such a Brighthaven thing. So that was like really interesting to be there for that whole debate and everything. And then watching my Reiki students come, because I would teach classes once a month there, and they would come in to meet the animals, and everybody would be like, oh no, poor Harley, he can't walk. They'd never seen a pig that was paraplegic before. And it was very disturbing and upsetting and sad. And so I would always pick the student who seemed the saddest about it. And I'd say, I want you to go sit in the pasture and share Reiki with Harley, because I knew what was going to happen. They didn't know. They would go out and they would sit, maybe 10 or 15 feet away, whatever felt comfortable for him. And he would oink at them and make all these great noises. And then when they would start to do their meditation, he would totally like relax and lay down and start snoring. And I remember his little corkscrew tail would go long during a Reiki session. It would just lose its curl and just get completely relaxed. And he would be snoring. And then every once in a while he'd go, really happy snorting, and then go back to, and without a doubt, every single time students would come in and they would be totally transformed. Oh my God, he's so amazing. And I feel so happy. I don't know. I just feel this joy coming from him. And he was pure joy personified. And that shift happened not only for me. Oh, poor Harley, he can't walk now. What's going to happen? He's going to live a joyful, awesome, full life, connecting with people and being amazing like he was. All my students who worked with him had that experience as well. And so that was a huge shift. He's one of the animals that helped me shift into another central teaching of the Let Animals Lead method, which is seeing the animal's perfection. Mm. So seeing in this moment, whatever they're facing, whether it's a physical challenge or an emotional, mental healing issue they're facing, that we see deeper than that. And we look to their heart, that beautiful light and essence of who they are, their inner Reiki, right? Mm-hmm. We look at that and we remember all is well. Mm-hmm. All is well. I see you. I see your light, and all is well. So not focusing on what's wrong, which actually is the way that you're taught in a human Reiki class. Mm-hmm. What's a diagnosis? What's wrong? Put your hands there. That's what you learn in human Reiki. So it was really the opposite of everything I'd learned in all my human Reiki classes. But it was so clear the animals were telling me, there's nothing wrong with me. Everything is fine. Why can't you see it? And I would meditate and then I could see it. Mm-hmm. So meditation really creates the space for that mental transformation of being able to see a wider view than just what's wrong, being able to open our mind and see more, see what's right in that difficult moment. And so that, besides the hands-on, hands-off whole thing, but that shift in my point of view and how should we see animals when we sit with them. Harley was a huge teacher of that.
Yeah. Wow, what an incredible individual. It's such a powerful story. Oh, excuse me, my dog just sneezed. He agrees, I think.
Yeah.
But before we transition into the meditation that you were hoping to lead, which sounds amazing, do you want to tell us more about your Let Animals Lead method and also the international conference that you just held with a similar title, and maybe just the significance of animal agency from a health and ethical point of view?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm really excited. We did just have, and actually Gay was one of our wonderful speakers at that conference. We had a conference called Letting Animals Lead Us to a Better Future. We invited all of these amazing speakers to come and speak on this topic and talk about the animals who have informed their journey and what they've learned from animals. And, I feel that as I've gone further and further on this journey, I realized that I accidentally became, somewhere along the way, an animal activist. I don't exactly know how that happened. I was not meaning for that to happen, but it happened through just sitting in meditation with animals and seeing their light and seeing their amazing ability to heal and to their resilience and their patience and their compassion and all these things, seeing them, seeing their fullness and the depth, I realized, wait, we shouldn't just let animals lead when we're doing Reiki. We need to let animals lead in as many ways as we can in the world, like through conservation. Why are we culling animals? Why aren't we letting animals sort this stuff out, giving them the space to rebalance the environment and, all different kinds. I realize there are voices out there in the world that are speaking this language, but from their science or animal rescue or whatever their perspective is. And I thought, well, what if we all get together and speak this language together in different ways? We can reach more people. And so this conference that we did through my nonprofit, Shelter Animal Reiki Association, the idea really was to show that bridge between what we're doing in animal Reiki and what so many animal advocates are doing around the world. So the Let Animals Lead method is really in alignment with creating better conditions for animals in the world, for giving them freedom and agency in whatever way we can, and kind of having that be the guiding light for how should we respond? What should we do? Well, what gives more agency? That's sort of what informs our Reiki decisions. That should be informing all these other problems in the world. And then really seeing it as, when animals lead, it helps us bring the world back into balance. They have this ancient wisdom if we could just listen to it, right? But it's really hard to get people to let go of old norms. That part of my journey that I haven't talked about today, but is a part of everything I've learned from animals is taking the path towards veganism and being a vegan. So there's a lot of things that has to change in your life when you open up your eyes to see the amazing spiritual nature of animals. And it's not always easy because our world is kind of created as a human dominated paradigm. And we're used to subjugating not just animals, but people, frankly, right? So that idea of valuing others, even if they're different from us, and giving them that sort of compassion and respect, I think that is something that we have trouble with, even with other human beings who are different from us. So animals, even more so. But I just feel that there are so many wonderful groups, and the Kurillos Center is one of them, that are on that edge of new thinking. And we at the Let Animals Lead Method, my students and I, our school, my nonprofit, we are with you guys 100%. And we're trying to break ground in the energy healing field with these same principles, because, you know, it can be across all different modalities, really.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so inspiring. It's such a it sounds like you guys are making some real progress and change in your field, and I'm so glad that we can talk about this together and have our organizations in alliance. It's wonderful. But would you like to lead the meditation that you talked about?
Yeah, let's do just a short little meditation so you guys can experience maybe a little bit of what a Reiki meditation feels like. And I recommend you can do this with your animal. It sounds like, Olivia, your dog is with you, so that's great. If your animal's with you, great. If not, you can try it with them, you know, later. I always say just, you know, sit 5 to 10 feet away from them and make sure they have a door where they can leave if they want to leave, so they don't have to take part, right? But this meditation is one of the foundational practices that I teach in my level 1 class. And it's one of my favorite practices to do even now after 25 years. I absolutely love this practice. This is a Japanese breathing technique called Joshin Kokyoho.
Cool.
So we'll start with palms together. This is a Japanese position called Gasho. It's just a way to sort of balance and center yourself. And we'll set our intention to dedicate all the energy of this practice to the animals. Whatever animals come to your mind and heart right now are perfect. And then I'd like you to place your hands on your lower belly. Your lower belly is an energy center known as your hara in Japanese, Hara. And your hara is 2 or 3 finger widths below your belly button in the center of your being. And you can imagine it as a beautiful light that's shining out. And this is your center of your physical being. It's also the center of your spiritual being. It's also your connection to earth energy and grounding. So just bring your mind to your hara for a moment. And now we're going to do a guided breath. And I want you to visualize your breath as a pure and clear light. And as you breathe in, it comes in through the top of your head, through your crown, and fills your body with light as it moves all the way down to the hara. And then on the out breath, imagine that light can expand like a gentle mist out of every pore in your skin and into your aura and into the universe. So breathing in the light through the top of the head, filling your body all the way to the hara, and breathing out, expanding this light in all directions, out your skin and out into the universe. And breathing in this light, connecting with the hara, breathing out this light, expanding. And just take a few more breaths at your own pace, visualizing that light coming in, connecting with the hara, and breathing out, expanding. And then relax your breath and see yourself sitting in this beautiful space of light, a light within and a light all around you. And imagine that this light is filled with perfect compassion and peacefulness, harmony and balance. And the energy of this light is sensed by your animals. When we hold this space, it's like a beautiful invitation that your animals can join us in if they wish. So just feel yourself shining this light, inviting your animals to share, but it's completely up to them. And then bringing your hands back into Gasho, palms together. And take a moment to thank your animals for sharing or connecting in whatever way they chose to in this moment was just perfect. And setting your intention to finish meditation, take a nice deep breath and come back and open your eyes. And I'd love you all to just take a minute and feel the shift in your energy since before this practice. Do you feel that? And that's a shift that animals sense and that animals are drawn to as we let go of all that dissipated, distracted, chaotic, crazy energy that we walk around with all the time, and we just center in calm, all is well. Animals love that when we do that for them. So we can feel a little bit how animals might feel if they want to share that space with us. Can help both of us just breathe and be at peace together. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. Such a beautiful practice, and this has been such an incredible conversation. Kathleen, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your wisdom and your insight around this topic. It's been incredible. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to ask a question at this point? I'm sure there's plenty of people with thoughts and comments they'd like to share. So if you guys want to type those into the chat, I can read them out. But we'll take some time for that right now. Yes, Ray, what would you like to share?
You knew I'd get in, right? And you know I get in. My question is, you're very cool. My question is, which I don't know if you can answer this, have you ever Reiki'd the big guys, wolves, bears, and elephants? And if you have, which I don't know, I don't know your background. I know you're from California, which I want to go back and live there. But is there a different energy that comes back from them as opposed to your energy given out? Does that make sense? I mean, there's got to be.
Yeah.
Have you been around wolves? You've been around wolves?
Wolves only twice. And it was with a tour and I wasn't able to do Reiki at that time, but I know really what you're saying about wild animals. The Reiki experience I've had with wild animals for the most part, except the ones that live in my vicinity here, it's been with captive wild animals. And that's probably a different energy because they have been through trauma and are living in captivity and everything that brings. But I have had some of my most profound personal healing experiences from animals, from wild animals. There's a black leopard who's passed away now, but lived at the Care Foundation in Florida, which is a exotic animal rescue where I have shared Reiki, and I've known them for a long time. And he was so amazing that meeting him and feeling his ferocity. And then he rolled on his back and was like a kitten in the Reiki space, like seeing that shift and that change. was absolutely profound. And he actually would come to me during my meditations. Shortly after I met him, I was diagnosed with cancer when I came home, and I had to go through this whole treatment and life or death and all that. His snarling face came to me every time in my meditations saying, you can fight this, you can beat this, you're strong enough. And so his strength was such a, like me being the person I am, thinking, well, I'm a goner because I can't possibly fight this. And he really, just knowing him and being in his energy and that ferocity kind of awakened something in me. I had another experience with a rattlesnake that was at the rescue, and did a meditation with this 6-foot-long rattlesnake, and had a really profound healing of some physical pain that I was experiencing for several months after my cancer surgery. So my
Can I ask another question?
in
Can I ask
meditation,
another?
sure, yeah.
Can I, without interrupting you, do you think the healing is more for you, or do you think it's for the animals, or do you think it's symbiotic? That
I think
if there's trauma,
we heal
yes, I
together,
agree.
and I feel that the animals, when we show up honestly and with an open heart, we heal that deep trauma together. And I think
Do you think it's more mentally? Do you think it's more mentally than physically?
I've had both from
Okay.
animals. I've had both. And, it's with animals, because these animals I've worked with are in captivity. It's really about healing their spiritual trauma, because we can't change their physical situation.
Well, mentally changes your physical.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. I mean, for me,
So if you're messed up mentally, it's going to affect your physical being.
absolutely.
So as a therapist, do you go after the physical, or do you go after both, mental and physical?
No, I don't go after either. I actually try to let go of any preconceptions or any issues, and I just show up and hold space with an open heart. And my mantra is all is well. So really trying to remember and see that light and that perfection in that moment. And the more I can do that, the more levels of healing seem to be able to come through. And the more that I can't do that, the harder it is to make a connection, So.
Did you ever get to a point where you can't do it? Did you ever get to a point where you're going in and ever said, can you help this person or this being, whatever it is, whether it's bears or whatever, you know what I mean? Did you ever get to a point and go, they're gone, I can't do it, I'm sorry, I just can't do it anymore?
The only time is when an animal says no. And I'm very cognizant of an animal saying no. But I have done Reiki for animals as they pass. And it is a very profound way. I see it as like I'm holding their paw as they cross that boundary, because Reiki is a spiritual space. So even if they're leaving their body, there is still this healing, peaceful, loving, compassionate thing that can take place, so there's never a time where I say it's too late.
Does your energy, I'm not going to keep, trust me, Olivia's going to shut me off in 5 seconds. Is your is your energy, I work with elephants, I work with bears. Is your energy the same, like you go in, or does your energy change when you're going to go, all right, I'm taking care of a chicken, nothing against chickens. Is your energy the same going in? Now I got to take care of a wolf. You know what I mean? Does your energy change based on their energy back to you? Does that make sense?
I think, I'm conscious of preconceptions that I have. And I think one of the gifts that experience with that rattlesnake taught me was don't judge an animal by what other people have told you about them, or even a previous experience you've had. Of course, in that experience, they were behind a glass wall, so I was perfectly safe. So one of the things that I do try to do is, if I'm with an animal, and this, I work a lot with horses, and I love horses. I think they're my spirit animal, but there are horses that I'm afraid of because of what they've been through, their trauma, they act out with aggression, whatever. even though I'm a total horse person and I have tons of horse experience, I'm not going to go in and then close my eyes and meditate, right? So I don't put myself in a position. I make sure that I'm in a safe space to go inward and really let go. And part of what happens is it doesn't matter anymore in that space that I'm a person and that's a wolf, or I'm a person and that's an elephant, because we are the light. I'm the light, you are the light. And it's that recognition of sameness on a spiritual level that sort of reminds us, oh, yes, we're all one. We're not that different. So I think, but having said that, I feel that animals always have more to offer me than I could ever offer them, as much as I try. But it's worth it for me to try as much as I can to give them as much as I can.
Did you ever go in? Seriously, and then Olivia's going to cut me off. I know she is. Did you ever go in and they're going to go, I don't want you around me. Get out of here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes.
You know what I mean? Like you go in with your open mind, you go in spiritually and mentally, obviously, and animals, which I have. Did you ever go in and they go, get out of here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Totally. And you know what? I don't take that personally, because what it shows to me is that they have choice and I'm listening to their choice. And so it's a win-win. Like that's the biggest thing, is that it's their choice and it's not about me. And, oh, but I was going to help this, whatever, it's like, no, it's not about you. It's about them. And if they say no, then they're expressing their agency. And I'm listening because I'm not in my human ego saying, no, but you need healing,
And it's time to walk. Then it's time to walk.
Absolutely.
They make the choices, don't they?
Absolutely. But sometimes animals are testing you. And
I know they do.
If they say no and you listen, the next time you ask, they'll often say yes. Because they were testing you that first time.
Can I bring this up? It's the way you ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
You go in with a different mindset, and then you go, let me try a different way. You know what I mean? And then they go, yeah, no, I'm listening to you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
All right, Livy's going to cut me off, so I got to
go. Not at all, right? Thank you for your questions, and Kathleen for your insightful answers. We do have another question here from Mike in the comment. He's wondering, have you used this when the person and animal have to part at the end of their life?
Absolutely, yes. And it is a really profound way to bring peace in the person's most grieving moment. So I think it's a really wonderful service. I've trained a lot of vet techs who their job is to sit with the person and the animal when the animal is at the vet office at the end of life. And they have just said it makes for a completely different experience to have a Reiki person there and holding space. So I think it is very comforting. I really find that animals they understand life and death and transition and have an acceptance with it that is very difficult for us as human beings. And so maybe in that experience with the animal and their person and the animal's passing, maybe it's really the person who needs the most support. But if we're there, the animal can feel, okay, my person is being supported. It's okay, I can go, so there's just a lot that can happen in that space of comfort and peacefulness, even though it seems like it's a really terrible moment, but it can be a really beautiful moment. It's still hard though, even though I practiced Reiki all these years, my horse, Shawnee, passed a couple of years ago. It was like a terrible, terrible day, but how much worse would it have been had I not had this practice, that I could really be present and with a loving and open heart in those final moments,
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else want to share anything or ask a question at this point? If not, we can move on, but I might want to make sure we leave the space for that.
I'll ask a question, of course.
Go for it, okay.
Can you tell us a little bit more if people are interested in studying with you? Is it do you do that through online, or how does that work these days?
Yeah, so these days I'm teaching all my classes online, and then I have immersion days where my students can come and we can be in community together at a sanctuary somewhere, which is really beautiful to do. But I do the training online. So my level 1 training is 8 weeks long. And we do a lesson each week, and then you go and you practice with your animals. So you get to like experiment and do all of this, and then come back and get feedback and ask questions and stuff. So that's the way that I organize all of my classes. I also have teachers, some really great teachers that are trained in this method. Some of them teach in person, some of them teach online. And so there's a lot of, if you can't take from me, my nonprofit, SARA, also a lot of teachers there. There are more and more people who are learning the Let Animals Lead method, which I'm really excited about. And actually, the Canadian Reiki Association has adopted our ethics and our method for their animal program. And they're the first Reiki association in the world to do so, because they wanted to have an ethical foundation and make sure that animals were being listened to. And so I have to really give them credit that they're the first human Reiki association to get on board with a different way forward for animals.
How is that reinforced?
Well, everybody who joins, who wants to be licensed animal Reiki practitioner, and with the insurance and everything else through their association, they have to do the Let Animals Lead training with me or one of my teachers. I have some teachers in Canada as well. So they have to do this training. I think they've grandfathered in some older people, but going forward, they are not going to accept anything else, because nobody else has the ethics or the animal agency, as we talked about, and that can be really problematic. So,
and how does that licensing, how does that work?
I don't know. In Canada, I'm not sure what they do. How it is really in the United States is that there are a lot of different human Reiki associations, and they're not really animal focused, they're human focused, and they don't tend to have any kind of outside standards. They just make their own standards and they do what they want. So that's why I think it's really important. And I try to get the word out about, if you are going to have an association and you're going to bring in people who do this professionally and who charge money and are calling themselves professionals, then you should probably know that they're working with a certain baseline of ethics with their clients, but it's kind of, it's a little less. It's not very regulated, and there's pretty much, you can find anything out there when you look at Reiki classes. So trying to create that ethical standard is sort of challenging, but that's why I'm really excited about Canada being the first, Reiki association that's trying to bring in lots of different groups and have like a professional standard that they're actually thinking about animals too in this new way. I think it's great. And I think it's a sign of things to come, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Wow, that's so exciting. Thank you, Gabe, for your questions. Carrie, do you have your hand raised? Would you like to ask something?
Yes, I first want to say thank you so much. This has just been a great series of information. And my question is kind of out there, and I've been in and out of the car, so I'm not sure if I've missed anything. But how does letting animals lead work with animals in extinction, and how much do we intervene or not? And this is just an ethical question I struggle with myself all the time, and wondering if you have an idea of how you deal with that.
I think Gay might be a better person to answer that question. I feel that's outside of my wheelhouse, definitely. But I will say that learning all of this in the Reiki space has really made me think, wait, where else can we learn from animals? Where else should we be listening to them and following their lead with things? And so I think there's, it's a question we should ask and think about. And, how can we encourage agency in as many ways and places and forms as possible. Because I always feel like, I don't know if you agree with this, Gay, but it seems like every time human beings try to get involved to solve a problem, we do something wrong. And so maybe sometimes helping things go back to their natural state instead of intervening might be, maybe it's not always possible, but I feel like, you know, it's ideal, isn't it? In a lot of things, I think. So that's all I'll say about that. I don't know if Gay wants to say anything else.
Well, I think it's really case specific, you know, what the constraints are. For example, I was thinking of a colleague, and she lives in the Bay Area, and there's some issues of, there was a turkey, a wild turkey that lived there for many years, and people were all upset. And they also have some geese around there, and people got upset because they thought the turkey was attacking people, etc. And so there was this back and forth between the agencies and all. And you know, and then, you know, should they capture him? Should they leave him? Should they kill him? And I think it really boils down to human expectations. So if you're really looking at, in the sense of focusing on, in that case of that individual, of human intervention, I mean, where they translocated, that was the quote unquote sort of the conciliatory agreement, you know, he's basically going to die. So, you know, they stick him someplace where he's totally by himself and it's foreign, and etc. I really think it comes down to human expectations and understanding, you know, what are our expectations? That's in the case of wildlife. So, for example, we have these opinions about wildlife, and I think, you know, we really need to treat them like we would like to be treated ourselves, like you are emphasizing agency. And when it comes down to it, you know, a case, maybe Mike can talk about this as a long-term animal doctor. It's an expectation. You know, I think a lot of people euthanize animals because they don't want to see the animal suffer, which I can totally agree with. But there's a fine line. You know, and when you look in the human circles, that's why suicide is, I don't know if it's illegal, but it's certainly, in some places it's a crime, you know, and there's all this, you know, brouhaha about, you know, assisted dying and things like that. So I think what we're dealing with is, you know, and your work is one example, is becoming very aware of our own expectations and our own ego, and the need for us to really expand our ability in terms of what we want life to be. So that's kind of a muddled answer, I'm sure, but it really is laying respect with that animal and giving enough space and time to be able to listen in and try to be, you know, kind of a prosthetic for that individual to be able to make decisions for his or her life. That's how I see with the animals here that I care for, like rabbits who have strokes and are really on the cusp. I try to be an instrument for them to be able to make the decisions the way they want, in the best that the way they can. And in most cases that I've encountered, they make their decisions. You know, I don't think there's, you know, undue suffering. You know, I think that there's certainly ways to alleviate that, to make the passage easier. That's my particular kind of thing. But nonetheless, it's highly tuned to listening and being present where that individual is at that moment. And to, you know, overcome our own fear of, you know, not seeing things the way we want them to work out. Again, like, I know it sounds kind of muddled, but, you know, for example, the wildlife agencies, you know, if you have an animal, you can't, you know, a skunk or a raccoon or a deer can't be reintroduced, they kill them, you know. So, you know, why? You know, in other words, you know, these are the kind of the crazy parameters with which we live. So I think that's really what the whole conclusion of the pandemic and climate change and everything is just like, take a back seat for a while and start slowing down and paying attention to the way nature works. Nature's what we call nature's ethics and principles. And as you brought up about the, you know, animals, I mean, in many ways, no life form that I've encountered wants to die. But at the same time, they are much more accepting in terms of that's the way things are. So we're really at the cusp, I think, of a relatively speaking, a radical spiritual, existential, ontological shift that's going on. And the work that you're doing, Kathleen, is just an example of working along that interface to make those changes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question, Carrie. Yeah, Mike, would you like to add something? Or ask a question of your own?
This is really, really interesting because you're kind of looking at another modality of medical care. And in veterinary medicine, we've gone to homeopathy, we've gone to allopathic medicine, we've gone to, now there's people that are interested in energy medicine, where you're talking about subtle energies. Well, now you're bringing another idea into the format where the animal actually enhances an opportunity for somebody that's willing to listen to. In veterinary medicine, they always say, well, you cannot communicate with your patient. And I totally disagree with that. I think you can communicate. Sometimes you can tell exactly, how an animal's going to react and so on. But sometimes definitive diagnosis is difficult. But because you can't directly communicate, but it's sort of like pediatrics in human medicine. I have a classmate that's a pediatrician and a veterinarian, and he finds a lot of similarity. Now you bring this other dimension into the format. I wonder, do you find that you do work with veterinarians in their practices to enhance the relationship between the patient and the veterinarian by another dimension of communication?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. I mean, I have one of my students who also teaches my method and is also a veterinarian and surgeon in his practice. He owns a big practice in Sacramento. And he talks about how he can breathe, that breathing technique that I taught you. He can do that in between patients to help clear himself. It said, especially if there's been like a really traumatic patient, right? And then you have to walk into the next room right away. And if you come in there with all that energy, then that makes that exam really, really difficult. So to be able to sort of clear yourself and bring yourself back to center and calm before you enter the room completely changes how that animal will respond to anything that he's doing. And the person too senses that, even though we don't sense it as easily. But so he sees it in that way. And also he uses it two other ways in his practice, which is really interesting. One is he will sit and do his Reiki meditation before he does a surgery. And he said that he finds that it helps him to be the best surgeon he can be. Like he is on his game. It like really centers him in to do his best work because he's present and he's clear, right? And then he's also trained his staff, and they are assigned when an animal's coming out of anesthesia to sit with the animal and do their meditation as the animal's waking up. And he says that they wake up more quickly and clear and with less pain. And so he said it's amazing. He does it for all his patients because he's just like, we couldn't do this as well as without. And the other place they use it in his clinic is for euthanasia. And they have the vet tech sitting and creating the space. And they just believe that it makes a huge difference in having it be a calmer, more peaceful experience for everybody, including him. I mean, this is something we haven't talked about, but that being a veterinarian has one of the highest suicide rates of all professions, and burnout is real. Compassion fatigue is real. And all of these techniques that you learn in our practice are also preventative for that compassion fatigue and depression and all that stuff. So it's really I wish every veterinarian and all of their staff could be trained in this as well, because it just will, even the front desk person, that's the face of your clinic when people come in. What energy are they putting out to the people and the animals? And so having them, do their practice, and then creating that space for the front office can make a huge difference in what's happening up there too. So I think there's endless potential for how to make things better and deeper, that bond, that communication, that understanding, and because we're all more present and centered, and so we can respond with more compassion.
Have you ever thought of introducing the concept into the veterinary curriculum at, say, Davis or any veterinary school in the United States? I wonder if Colorado State did that with Bernie Rollins. I don't know if you know who Bernie is, but I imagine some of you heard Bernie.
I mean, I think you really need connections, and also you need to be a vet. And since I'm not a vet, but what I am doing right now through my nonprofit, SARA, 2 of our veterinarians who also teach this method, they are in talks and communication with RACE certification right now. And this is the certification to get for vet techs to get continuing education. And we're trying to get a course in there that is RACE certified that they would teach. So I don't think they would allow me to teach it, but both of my students who are vets would probably be allowed to do that. So I am trying to put my vets who are teachers in places where maybe they can be listened to. But it's really hard. I mean, I did go to UC Davis a few years ago. I was invited by their student holistic club, their veterinary holistic medical club or something. And they invited me to come speak to them, and they loved it. And I brought copies of my books for them, and they were really excited about it. And they said, "Oh, I want to learn Reiki when I'm a vet." But they came up to me after my talk and they said, "Our professors tell us that Reiki is fake, that it's not scientifically based, that it's useless. Don't do it." And they apparently say the same thing about acupuncture and chiropractic and everything else. So they're not very holistically minded, at least as of, this was like 5 or 6 years ago. So I was there at the bequest of the students who were learning to become vets, who really wanted to know about holistic things because it was not being offered. And they were not open at all at the college. So I haven't really had any success there, but I mean, I welcome it if and when anybody, any way I can facilitate that, absolutely, I'd be on board.
Well, there is a special veterinary association now that tends to move in that direction. Also, Richard Pitcairn, of course, he and I go back a long way, but I think he's probably retired now, but he was one of the top homeopaths in the United States for veterinary medicine. And they offer a new road in veterinary medicine. So maybe I can send that over to Dr. Bradshaw, and she could relay that organization over to you, because I think they might be open to exploring that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for your question, all your comments.
I think a lot of the change is coming from the quote unquote outside, where, again, I'm just surmising, Mike, maybe we can say something where veterinarians and doctors of various ilk make these changes to integrate other things in their practice because people are asking for them. So I think a large part is practices are starting to expand in that area. That's just my mole's eye view in terms of what's going on.
I think you're right on that. I do.
Which may actually be more appropriate, in the sense of, it may be retain its integrity outside as it permeates in, rather than maybe being potentially turned into another instrument, which is, quite a different philosophy or something like that.
Well, this is cutting edge discussion because, you're moving in a whole new direction of healing. It's a new concept in healing. And the germ theory of disease is not quite 200 years old, but it isn't. It's fairly new, and then this is coming on the as a new wave of observation and opportunity that we haven't ever had before, because it was totally cut out. Allopathic medicine carried the way. It wouldn't allow homeopathy or any other type of medicine into the field. The drug companies and and the allopaths carried all the weight. Now we're into a new progressive way of thinking, which is all different than what we came through in the last couple hundred years.
Absolutely. This has been great. If anyone else wants to make any last comments or questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, really great questions and discussion and food for thought and all that other good stuff. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely, and thank you. This has been incredible, and really, food for thought is the great term for it. There's much to think about now, and it's been so wonderful to have you on with us, Kathleen. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you so much.
I'll make a quick comment. Mike, it's up to you. I think in general, what's happening is a kind of a bigger picture is because of all the shift that's happening in the world. The focal thing is really how we regard life and death. What is the nature of death? Not and it's not in one of these Gedanken experiments. I mean, it's very much upfront. So in some ways, I would say that the silver lining of the tremendous kind of upheaval and the suffering that's going on is there's a recalibration of what it means to live and what it means to die in that way. So that's just a little parting comment.
Thank you.
Discussion of death, because when you look at what Einstein did, you say, okay, it was a transformation of mass and energy. So is there such a thing as death? I don't know, because we don't know what's after and we don't know what's before, but we do know mass and energy are balanced through the theory of relativity. So I don't know if there is such thing as death. I don't know.
We're waiting for the postcard that he's going to send.
What's that?
We're waiting for Einstein's postcard.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I have to get in last comment, okay? Wait, Mike, you're still in San Diego, right?
Right, yeah.
I'll be out there for probably half of the month of June.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're gonna have lunch, okay?
All right.
Well, we are. I'm gonna find out where you live. You can tell me. Gail will give me your address. You can give me your address. But you and I are gonna sit down for a long conversation, okay?
Well, I don't know. I've had to talk about death to.
It's okay. Are you in San Diego, or are you outside of San Diego?
South San Diego. Yeah. So,
all right. I'll find you. I'll find you. I lived in North Park for years.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
I'll find you. Not. We're gonna go off on tangents because Olivia's gonna kill me because she's in Chicago and she knows where I live. So I'm gonna get whacked after this conversation. So I'll see you in San Diego in a few months. Okay.
Right. I'll keep in touch.
You got it.
Through Gabe.
Wonderful. Well, sounds like there's much to look forward to, and our next speaker a week from today will be Friday, March 24th. We'll be joined by Carolyn Ingram, an author, lecturer, teacher, and leading expert in the field of animal self-medication and founder of the Ingram method of individualized medicine. And next week, we will be back at our normal time of 10 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you, everybody, for your flexibility today. We're really glad that you could join us and hear all of the wisdom that Kathleen was so kind to share with us. And once again, to everybody, and Kathleen, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time with us and all your insights and questions. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all soon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Bye.
Kathleen.
Bye.